If you don't
Thank you
mind,
very much. Thank you very much.
if you don't mind, I'm going to do a small introduction.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so that we know who is Carlo, who is Dr. Carlo. And just, we've been having these sessions every Friday.
Yeah.
The boys are really enjoying. Many people are telling me that they're getting a lot of good out of it. So thank you a lot for joining us.
Yes.
And today with us is Dr. Carlo Annoscia. So Carlo has an undergraduate degree in chemical engineering, and then he went on to do a doctorate in biology, histopathology. Currently, he's a professor of ethics in Strathmore University, and he's been a teacher in the Strathmore School for the last 46 years.
Yeah, man.
In the school, he taught biology, technical drawing, and ethics. So Carl also worked in cancer research.
Yeah.
Yeah, for many years, testing substances like chromium, asbestos compound, and MVC as potential.
Where did you get all this information, man?
I know you can. So, in fact, one of these days, you're going to tell us about your research. But anyway, today he's going to talk to us about liberty, security, intimacy, and all that, ideas about moving on after coronavirus. Just besides it, just I think it'd be good to know that Carlo likes cooking, and he often organizes cookouts with friends. So you better be a good friend of Carlo to benefit from this.
Yes.
So with that, thank you very much, Carlo. Please welcome.
Well, first of all, let me tell you something that I'm not going to talk for 1 hour.
Okay, very good. Yes.
But perhaps in between, some people may want to ask something, some
yes.
questions, right?
Yeah.
Now, you have asked me to talk about liberty, freedom, and to emphasize this, all right? However, I would like to start by talking about a virtue that is very important in order to understand freedom, the real freedom, right? What is freedom? Well, first of all, freedom is the capacity of controlling oneself, of having dominion over oneself, in order to direct all one's own actions towards the proper purpose. But in order to have a control of oneself, there is a virtue that I deem to be very important. And this is the virtue of order. The virtue of order. Why do I tackle the virtue of order? Because I think it is a virtue that helps one control oneself, have control of oneself by, we can say, having dominion over the things that he is handling every day, right? And of course, order is also a very important virtue in order to work with efficiency without wasting time. And so it allows us to do many more things that we would expect to be able to do. So it is so important that there is a sentence of St. Augustine that speaks about this virtue, which goes like that: keep order, and order will keep you. Keep order, and order will keep you. In other words, if we acquire this virtue of order, eventually we will not have to make any struggle in order to have dominion over ourselves. The virtue itself will take care of that. And we will be able to travel in this world very efficiently, very, we can say, sure of ourselves. Hmm? So this virtue of order is something that requires, though as any other virtue at the beginning, a bit of struggle, because, you know, not everyone is born with an attitude of order or an habit of order. As a matter of fact, you know, there are some people who believe in a personal type of disorderly order. Hmm? As a matter of fact, you enter into the room of this fellow and you will say books scattered all over, papers scattered all over, and say, hey, what's going on here? No, no, wait, no, man, because how are you going to find things that that you need? You know, I know exactly where things are, right? Well, and order also requires an attitude of, we can say, of beauty. Eh? And if you enter into a disorderly room, the first thing that you will say, damn it, this room is, among other things, very ugly. Hmm? So we have to keep that in mind, that many things go together because we are not separated categories in our life, but every aspect of our life requires a certain type of situation that pleases them. So what I'm saying is that this order is something that you have to learn how to live little by little every day. And I say, order, as I said before, is very much related to freedom because it is connected to through dominion over oneself. Dominion over oneself. Let me tell you a story which may portray this dominion over oneself. Hmm? There was a person, I think he was in Mexico, who was a relatively wealthy man, and he was kidnapped for ransom by some gangsters or terrorists, I don't remember. And he was kept, you know, in his room, in the room without windows, with one light that was going on and on and off, and no one would talk to him. I mean, a situation in which everyone would have gone mad, right? So he was there perhaps for 6 months. Okay? But one day there was a public holiday, and these kidnappers went to him with a piece of paper on which it was written, "Today is a national holiday. Would you like to have anything particular?" And the fellow started thinking and saying, "Yes, I would like to have a cold glass of whiskey." Cold glass of whiskey, amazing. And the fellows complied. So they brought to him a cold glass of whiskey. And this fellow took that glass of whiskey, he put it on his forehead, on his face, to experience, you know, the pleasure of that was coming. And then all of a sudden, the kidnappers saw this fellow taking the glass of whiskey and pouring it into the toilet. You may say, well, this may have been a crazy action. Well, but you have to understand this in the right perspective, because many months later, when the fellow was able to give a public conference recounting his adventure, well, you know, eventually he said, at that particular moment, when I got rid of the glass of whiskey, I recovered my freedom. I recovered my freedom, the freedom of self-dominion, the capacity of saying no to things that I like very much. And of course, the fellow was able to do that because he had been training oneself, in virtues, in order of importance of things here and there, and eventually, in doing, in carrying out this act of self-denial, he really regained his freedom. So you see, freedom is not to be free from shackles, for instance, because you can be a prisoner, you can be a fellow who has been kidnapped, but what really matters at the end of the day is that interior freedom that makes you accept the situation in which you are and make the best use of it, even if you are confined within four rules. Now, what I'm saying is this, that we many times are slaves. We are slaves of what we like, of what we don't like. These days there are so many things that attract us, gadgets here, gadgets there, the latest telephone, the latest tablet, the latest computer, and of course, we have to learn many times how to say no with determination, with willpower, because our life does not depend upon these things. We have to be in control of whatever we have at hand, whatever we are using. Another important thing is that this self-dominion, which is a real manifestation of interior freedom, will lead you to great things in life. Let me tell you another story. When I was in Italy, because I am coming from Italy, I'm not coming from Spain. I am Carlo and not Carlos. All right, that's many people think. Well, when I was in Italy, I had a good friend. And then what happened? Well, this friend was a very famous surgeon. He became a very famous surgeon. In fact, he was the first one who started the kidney transplants in Italy. Okay? And then, how did he get there? Well, when he was in the first year of medicine, he had made arrangement with the caretaker of the mortuary of the faculty of medicine, where he kept all these bodies frozen, so preserving formally, so as to be able to carry out his own personal anatomical dissection. And therefore, he was there already at 6 o'clock in the morning, doing his own personal dissection. And then at 8 o'clock, he would join all the other students at the beginning of classes. That is willpower. Willpower, that is self-control, that is order of priorities, of order of importance. And of course, he eventually became what he was, a very important surgeon, first guy to start the kidney transplants in Italy, and they started making, history. So I tell you these things because many times we are distracted by many things that Perhaps in themselves they are good or neutral, but they are things that are making us waste a lot of time and distracting them from what is really important. Now, I'm telling you these things in a particular situation, not only of Kenya, but also of the world. How many people are confined at home? How many people have lost their jobs? How many people start asking themselves, what the hell am I going to do now? And the same question I am asking you now. What are you going to do now? What are the priorities that I have? I have to put order in my priorities. I have the possibility of doing so many things eh, because the schools are closed. Admittedly, you may continue attending classes online, etc. But definitely, you have much more time now than you would have in ordinary circumstances. Are you making use of your time? Are you really try to say, I want to achieve certain things? And the first thing that you have to, to go back to, if you had it before, is a timetable. To subject yourself to a timetable and obey it. There is where your freedom lies. There is where you grow to the measure of man. You cannot just say, oh, now I have all the time that I want. I have the possibility of doing everything, and eventually you will do nothing because you live in an absolute type of freedom which consists in hanging between two trees in a hammock, drinking a beer, perhaps not, right? No, that is not the the good use of freedom that one should look forward to. Okay, so to subject yourself to a timetable, to establish goals, using the virtue of order that will tell you what is more important and what is less important, what is more urgent and what is less urgent. Because you see, there is a difference between the important things and urgent things. The urgent things have to be dealt with sasa but the important things require study, require attention, require all sorts of virtues, in particular the virtue of order. Now, remember this, that freedom is not the freedom of doing nothing. Freedom is the freedom of doing things with a purpose. And therefore, I encourage you now, during these days in which you are constrained by this pandemic, etc., to start thinking about what you can actually do in order to enrich yourself, to become more a man, we can say, no? Because the man is also always measured, by the things that he does. If he does bad things, he's a bad man. If he does a good thing, he's a good man, right? So anything that we do can actually diminish our humanity or increase our humanity. That is obviously the result of practicing virtue, right? So order is a virtue that is necessary in order to move to action in a proper way. Before doing anything, I need to think about what I want to achieve, about the means that I need to use. And here is another virtue that comes in, which is the virtue of prudence, which is the classical virtue that is connected with action. Prudence is not, restraining oneself from acting. On the contrary, is pushing one to act by thinking, by knowing what one is going to do, by seeking the means that he is going to use in order, to be able to carry out that. And the order is therefore that should always accompany our actions. And our actions should always be the result of our free determination to act. Remember, freedom is freedom to act, not the freedom of doing nothing, right? So, when we talk about order, it's not only order of things. When you have a table full of small things, instinctively you will start making separation. You will separate the screws and put them all together in one group, the washers in another group, and the nails in another group, and small things that cannot be classified yet, you put them in another group. So this is one of the characteristics of the human beings, the categorization, which makes your life much easier because you can find things much faster and you don't waste the time. However, this material order just mentioned is not the only one. There is another type of order that concerns our intellect and our will. So the order of ideas for our intellect and the order of affections in our will. Because, for instance, when we study, we always study from simple concepts and ideas in order to move farther on. And this should be at least the role of schooling, of education, to start from simpler ideas going towards higher ideas of higher level. But also the will has to be ordered. When we love, we have to love with order. We cannot just love with disorder. What do I mean by that? Well, when a married person realizes that he is married, well, mother, father, sisters, brothers, and so on and so forth become less important in the order of love, because the first love that a married man has to consider is the love towards his wife and children. So, and therefore, this realization conditions a whole series of actions or initiatives that he may face, making decisions. What is it I'm going to do now? Well, I know that my wife and children are more important than my father and mother. So I have to perhaps consult with my wife if it is okay for me to go and visit them. That is the order of love, the order of affections. And unfortunately, many times people are not free in these matters because they are not living the right order of priorities in relation to love and in relation to affections. So this is something that you have to consider very, very seriously. And of course, these two types of order are very important in man in order to be able to direct all his actions towards his ultimate end. And his ultimate end is the glory of God. And therefore, in the order of loves, God comes first, absolutely, in an absolute way. Many times we don't realize this, you know, but many times, sometimes, or we may face the reality of death because we have to defend the glory of God. So if we don't have that very clear in our minds, other types of love will flood our heart and produce it. Remember that the whole creation is ordered in view of the glory of God. And this order is kept by the laws that govern things in a necessary way. The cow being a cow, the crocodile being crocodile, and man being man. What does to be a man mean? What is the reality of man? He is a rational being, rational being, a rational animal, as Aristotle defines it. Therefore, anything that we do should be always smell of rationality, smell of understanding what the nature of things are and respect them. This is the right use of reason, and only in this way, as human beings, we can give glory to God as well. I don't know what else could I tell you, but obviously the only thing that I would like to encourage you to do is to revise your present situation, to revise your present attitude, to check whether you are really free of slave of people, things, situations, gadgets, anything like that. Because perhaps you have not really yet put order among all these things. And then you will realize that when you start putting order, things will start falling in place, and you will really acquire this freedom, which is so important in order to go to the measure. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Carlo. If you don't mind,
Yeah.
some boys have sent me questions to ask, which is something
Yes.
I prefer because that way we save a bit of time because many questions are coming. So without much ado, the first question, the boy says, if really choosing performing an action that diminishes your nature is the same as being a slave, how would you define a good act?
Very interesting question. What is a good action?
Yes.
A good action is always an action that is carried out according to reason. If I know that something is in a certain way, and in doing something in relation to that thing, I ignore his way of being because I am trying to impose myself on it, then obviously that cannot be a good action. In other words, pay attention. A very simple example. Some people enjoy themselves torturing dogs. Is it a good action or a bad action?
Bad action.
After all, a dog is an animal. I can do whatever I want with it.
Yeah.
That is not true. You have to respect the dog for what it is, to be a dog. And therefore, although you are not committing a bad action towards that dog, you are committing a bad action against yourself because you are going against your reason. I don't know if you understand it, right?
Yes, yes.
There was this famous philosopher called Socrates
Hmm.
who used to say that it's a bad action, or a sinful action rather, is a result of ignorance, right? And therefore, although Socrates was partially true in this, because obviously it is not enough to know things in order to carry out actions that are in accordance with reason, but the will has to come in and to act, for one to act freely, all right? So freedom ultimately is what makes an action bad or good, sinful or not sinful, right?
Yeah.
So we have to keep always this in our mind. There is a world outside there that is made in a certain way. I have a reason whose responsibility is to know how things are outside there. And once I know what things are, I acquire automatically the responsibility of respecting them from for what they are, without forcing them to be what I would like them to be. Now, this is fundamental, a fundamental in ethics. eh? If you understand this, you have understood everything about ethics. The foundation of ethics is in nature, in the nature of things, in the way in which things are, and in my reason, which has the capacity to know what things are, and automatically the responsibility of respecting them from what we are. But definitely remember that every time I go against nature, nature revenges itself, right? I cannot go into a chemistry lab and I see, oh, fantastic, this solution here has a good color. Let me taste it. You will be dead in 2 minutes. You see, no respect of the natures of things, right? So I think that is basically what determines a good action.
Yeah.
The knowledge of things insofar as they are what they are, and the respect that I have of them once I know what they are for.
Wow, interesting.
Next,
Thank you. Carlo, now somebody is also asking that you give an example of a doctor who is very meticulous, very on
yeah,
time, very punctual, eventually
yes,
becomes a very good man and
mm,
very professional. So
yes.
now the question is, where does God come in? Because this man is orderly. He seems to be what he wants, the best professional.
Yes.
But, where does God come in?
Where?
Yeah, like, does this man
Where
need God?
God comes in, or whether God comes in? What is the
Whether,
question?
better said, whether God comes in, because this man seems to be what he wants to be, a good professional, and God is not in the picture.
God is not in the picture.
Yes.
Well, perhaps the fellow is not conscious of the fact that in order to do things well, in order to do things well, he is not conscious of the fact that in doing what he is doing properly, professionally, etc., he is already very close to God. But of course, man is also free. Therefore, man, in whatever he does, he must do with an intention, all right?
Yeah.
Now, the intention with which we do things, we human beings, and we human beings are the only beings that can do things with a specific intention. Well, there are only two intentions. Either I do things in order to give glory to myself, or in order to give glory to God. But you may give glory to God in an indirect way, for instance,
Mm.
because you are actually dealing with your patients, concerned about their welfare. They give yourself totally to the others. I mean, in giving oneself totally to the others without expecting anything in return, well, that puts yourself very much close to God, I think. Although the fellow may say, no, I don't believe in God, you know, I have had bad experiences, etc. Remember that the fact of atheism, the fact of not believing in God, is always a, a result of the action of the will, not of the intellect. I don't want God to exist, but no one in the world can escape the question about God. You cannot demonstrate that God does not exist, but there are so many evidences that speak about the existence of God. That is the paradox. I don't know if I have answered.
Yes, very good, girl. Now, a typical question here, somebody is asking, if I steal from the rich to give the poor,
Eh,
especially now things are tricky,
eh.
what can you tell me?
Remember that the story of Robin Hood. Robin Hood used to steal from the poor in order to give to the rich. You remember that?
Yes, yes.
Eh. So remember that stealing, which is taking away things from someone without his permission, is always theft, and therefore always condemned by the seventh commandment. It is an intrinsically evil action, no matter whether it is 1 million or 10 bob. You understand it?
Hmm.
But obviously, you have to distinguish in the action the object, which is a stealing, which is bad, and the intention and the circumstances. Now, the intention and the circumstances may reduce the guilt and or remove it altogether, right? But it doesn't turn that action into a good action. So one has to distinguish between the action and the guilt that is connected to the bad action. If I explain?
Yes, yes. And now somebody is also asking something interesting, saying we've seen some people in the history of the world, like
Yes.
Saint John Paul II,
Eh.
who were able to accomplish so much
Hmm.
in such a short time.
Hmm.
Does it mean that these people were able to exercise their freedom in a better way, or they were just better endowed by God to do whatever they were able to do?
John Paul II, Saint John Paul II was Pope for 26 years.
Yeah,
I think that was a very short time. As a matter of fact, he had much more time than perhaps many of us in
yeah,
what he could actually do, even considering presidents of republic or whatever. He had a lot of time. Eh?
yeah.
Uh, I would say that Saint John Paul II had a very good weapon in his mind, in his hands, which was John Paul II was a man of prayer. As a matter of fact, see a photograph him always somehow recollected or praying or being in chapel, etc. Even when he came to Kenya, he was not even interested in seeing rhinos or elephants. Huh? He was there praying all the time. So That is one thing that one has to realize also, that we by ourselves many times cannot do this, but with God we can do so much. We can do so much, and perhaps this could be also a resolution for a lot of you, because you know, perhaps you have abandoned your prayer in this time of coronavirus, or you have, not given it much importance. I think it's a very good time for you to reconsider your interior life, to reconsider your union with God, because ultimately, the ultimate end of our life, which is God Himself, is the one that pushes us to do things more and better here. The virtue of hope, the Christian virtue of hope, is a powerful virtue that can push you to do already great things here on earth. All right.
Good. More questions coming.
Good, man. I'm going.
No, please, no, please.
No, thank you.
Stay with us a bit longer, because
Yeah.
we have many doubts in. Somebody is asking about the order of affection. So he's saying that, as adolescents, there's always pressure, or I would say,
Sorry, say it properly.
there's a question about the order of affection.
Affections, yes.
Yes. So they say, as boys growing up, there comes a time when you feel like you need a bit of time away from your parents, make your own decision. So
Yes.
how do you relate that? How do you work that out?
Well,
at the
how
same
that?
time loving your parents very well, knowing the good they've done for you?
I don't think there is any conflict there, or at least I don't see
Okay.
there being conflict. A different thing would be, for instance, to transfer your interest to a girlfriend, which is a wrong order of affections now, you see. By the way, I don't believe in girlfriends. They don't exist in my dictionary. Right?
How comes?
What exists in my dictionary is the word fiancé, which entails commitment.
A good one.
But the concept of girlfriend does not entail commitment. It means just a casual relationship which may eventually lead to bad things, right? Because you cannot just be with a girlfriend looking at each other's eyes all the time. You know what I mean? But a fiancé is a much more serious thing. This is the lady who is going to be my wife. This is the lady who is going to be the mother of my children. And therefore, I will think about it, I think to it when the time comes. Now, my order of affections pulls me in a different direction. If I say that, hello?
Yes. Yeah, is very much on point, eh?
Yeah. sorry guys, but
no, very good, eh? Tell you the truth, Carlo, very good ideas. So in fact, I got a bit distracted because there are many questions coming here. So somebody's saying, when looking at the nature of something, should we always look at it as if it was created by God and therefore respect it?
Well, that is what eventually leads to,
Yeah.
Things in nature don't explain themselves.
Ah, okay.
They don't have a reason of their being
Ah,
in
yeah.
themselves. Hmm? However,
Mhm.
when I look at anything in the natural order,
Yeah.
the things are in a certain way, and this certain way conditions a certain way of behaving, right? And
Okay.
therefore, I always have to respect that order. Now, uh, this is true for a fellow who doesn't see God in nature, and for a fellow who sees God in nature. It is the same thing, right?
Mm.
Would you say?
I'm still up trying to absorb that. But anyway, as let's move on.
Yeah.
Somebody is saying that the other day he met a family that was really poor,
Mm.
and yeah, the circumstances were really bad. They didn't have the bare necessities. So he's just asking himself or thinking, what did I do to deserve or to be born where I am? Because I don't lack those basic necessities.
Yeah, definitely. God, in giving you all these things, expects you to make use of, of them for the others.
Yeah,
And that is very important.
that's right.
Therefore, when you go and visit some poor people or some sick people,
Yeah.
you cannot go there with the attitude of saying, I'm going to solve his material problems. Perhaps you may, but what you can actually do is to spend time with them,
Okay.
to listen to them,
Mm.
to give them more hope. eh? You see, because many times people, old people, poor people, are abandoned. Therefore, no one takes care of them. And then we never think that what is important many times is to give an ear to them
Mm.
because they don't have the opportunity to speak to anyone. And that is terrible, in fact.
That's true.
So, if you have a lot of goods, make sure that you help others with those goods because obviously God has given them to you for that purpose, not for your personal lonely enjoyment.
Mm.
Next.
Next is somebody saying that we are in an environment where being a Christian or trying to live as such
Yeah,
is considered unfashionable,
yeah,
or and sometimes requires a bit of sacrifice
yes,
and also a bit of courage, because you're subjected to
yes,
sometimes to a bit of ridicule.
yes.
Does it uh, please explain to us how we can exercise our freedom well in this area, not fall to the pressure?
With a lot of faith,
Yes.
with a lot of material life.
Okay.
There is an example.
Mm-hmm.
The early Christians. You know, the early Christians.
Yes.
They lived in the pagan world that was even worse than ours, right? And when everyone was going to the circus to see gladiators killing each other and animals killing Christians, well, the Christians stopped going to the circus.
Mm.
At times we have to do the same. If we know that in a certain theater they are showing a very bad movie, we are not going to that.
Okay.
We know that if we will have to go around always with our eyes closed, we don't go to that beach.
That's true.
That is a determination of Christians. Really, their behavior sometimes considered antisocial. whole Roman pagan world.
Wow, interesting. And then the last question that we have here is in relation to order, what you talked about in the beginning, that that God comes first, absolutely, that you insisted. And so this man is saying, what can we do? Some advice on what we can do that this be always our our reality, that
our reality.
No, that this, let me just even read. They say, you say that God should always be first, absolutely, in our life.
Yes.
What can we do so that this reality that God is always first?
It is very simple, because of the connection between ethical life, ethical life, and supernatural life.
Echo.
Then, whenever you do something, act always according to reason. In other words, make sure that your action is a good action.
Wow. Very simple and to the point, Carlo. Any
Very
parting shot?
And then, of course,
Yes.
Whenever you act, remember the intention of the good action.
Yeah.
And the intention is to give glory to God. So remember that I am going to do this, Lord, for you, for your glory, not for my glory.
That's true. Yeah. Wow. Thank you very much.
To you.
We really appreciate, and we'll keep in touch to continue this ever-present reaction.
Okay, man, you guys study for the exams.
Thank you.
The exams are coming. Okay?